if UV light damages plastics, why in the world are we using it in our retrobrighting techniques? I'm Mr. Gigabytes, and this is Gigabytes Technology. Okay, it's time to do a little bit of science here. So why are we using UV light if it damages plastics? Every single plastic website I've been to says that UV radiation damages plastics in a process called photodegradation. So when we're putting it in the sun, we're actually damaging the plastic more. Our saving grace is chemistry works faster than light. And what I mean by that is that when you have it in your hydrogen peroxide solution, you are initiating a chemical process that works faster than the light can damage it. So photodegradation happens over time, and it gradually gets worse and worse and worse. But your chemical reaction that you're creating with your hydrogen peroxide solution works on that same plastic within a few hours. And so your chemical reaction is working faster than the photodegradation. See where I'm going with this? So what we need, and particularly me in a northern latitude, is a process by which we can just use heat. It should be the most effective if we get it right. If we use a process that only uses heat, it should be a very easy process to do. The trick is to get that plastic as warm as it can get before it starts melting. You need a vat big enough for some of the bigger pieces, and you need to be able to control and monitor the temperature. Well, to monitor the temperature, you can simply use a thermometer. For a vessel, what I'm going to use is a roaster. This can get down to below 200 degrees, which is key because I don't even want to approach 200 degrees Fahrenheit. I want to stay, within. I want to stay around 30 degrees less, 20 to 30 degrees less to get a good result. The heat is necessary to get the chemical reaction to catalyze, and so we're going to use heat and hydrogen peroxide to do the keys on this keyboard. And this is just a junk keyboard that I got at a garage sale. It's pretty evenly yellowed across all the keys, so we have a nice uniform yellowing. Normally this would have just been gone to the electronics recycler, but this is a much better purpose for it. So let's start the experiment, shall we? Okay, first we're going to take a look at the bleach, the alcohol, and the vinegar. It looks like we definitely got a result. This bottom row was just left at room temperature, and here's our control key, which is not a control key. The control key on the keyboard was a darker plastic, so we're not using the control key. So obvious jokes aside, this ours, it was left out of the batch, and so the top side is the yellowed color and the bottom side is the original color. It looks like we really didn't get any effect without heating anything. So there may be some slight differences. There really isn't a whole lot there. So let's just move these aside here. And let's take a look at the other keys, because this did get an interesting result. So it looks like we got some result with the bleach, but again, heating up bleach like I did, very risky. You certainly wouldn't want a vat of it heating up, and not only that, it looks like it ate away a little bit. There's like when I pulled it out, it was gooey, and there was, you could rub your fingers across. In fact, you look at my fingers. I've got kind of plastic resin on my thumb here. Yeah, that's from this key, and you can see it's kind of white and powdery, and yeah, it's pretty terrible. This damaged the key. But speaking of damage, you know, let's move over to the next key, which was in alcohol. Now, at the end of 3 hours, a lot of it had boiled away, but you can see that it was, yeah, it was pretty terrible. The temperature never got above 177 degrees, but because the alcohol has a lot lower boiling temperature, I think things happened to this key that were don't take your alcohol warm. Let's just say that. But yeah, this was a pretty terrible result. In fact, the top of the key is actually missing. It actually removed a layer all the way around the key. And yeah, pretty terrible. So then the next one is the vinegar. There was a result. And that result, let me bring this up here. You know, it looks a little lighter, right? Let's bring it over to the side. The vinegar actually it made the entire key all the same color, equal damage, as it were. If we compare it to the bottom side here, yeah, we got it. Basically, it's brown all over. There's no there we go. There's a little bit of fading. I mean, it did treat it a little bit, but yeah, that didn't really yield the kind of result that we're looking for. So this is where we had some success. And the first one I'm going to show you is the 3% hydrogen peroxide, like you would buy off the shelf at a drugstore. And this was cold. This was at room temperature. So not really a result there. So we'll move that to the side. But once we heated it up, that was a pretty good result, I'd say. Even at 3% dilution, we definitely had a result. So let's take a look at that. And as you can see, and I can see it here too, this is actually very close. After about 3 hours, this is pretty close to the original color at about a 3% solution. Now keep in mind, none of these solutions were watered down at all. So yeah, pretty good result there. This is the developer. It's pretty much the same color. So this is no heating with the developer. This one, however, about 3 hours in the bath. And when I first pulled it out, there was actually there was still a little bit of yellowing, but just a little bit. It was almost not even noticeable. But I would say this is almost too white. This is very, very white, but as you can see, there's nothing. You can't really see a trace of the of the ring at all. If I had to, if anything, I think this is maybe too strong. So diluting it with water definitely is advisable, as you've seen many others do it when you're doing a submersion Retrobrite like this. Very interesting result there. Now, the next one is just water. This is water at room temperature. Pretty much nothing there. So this is probably the most interesting result. This was just dropped into the water. This is just heated up. With the water heated up. Now, I may have to run this again just to see if I can replicate this result. As you can see, it didn't take it all away, but after 3 hours, it significantly lightened it up with just water. I would have to say that's a very interesting result. So at this point, I'm going to have to stop the video here because it's 2 weeks later. Well, I have a recipe. It took quite a bit, about a dozen or so experiments to get this recipe. I broke a lot of equipment. Really broke a lot of equipment. This is the lid for the for that turkey roaster with all the different chemicals that I had in the vat at different times. It really did a number on this this shiny chrome lid. Turkey roaster actually broke after about 4, 5, 6 experiments, something like that. Some of them kind of ran together because I would start with one ingredient, see if there's a result, go with another ingredient, add another ingredient, see if there was a result, add another ingredient, that type of thing. So it was a kind of a slow process. I was trying to find the percentages and what we needed to get this retrobriting done, and what temperatures, so yeah, it's probably was more than a dozen experiments. When the turkey baster broke, what I did is I pulled the pan out and I got a hot plate to actually heat up the pan of the turkey roaster. Now I don't recommend this because that's direct heat on that pan, and you either need to keep it up off the bottom, keep the part insulated from the heat of the hot plate or whatever heat source you've got. So if you've only got it in the single pan and you have heat directly applied to that pan, make sure that you've got something to keep your part up off the bottom, either with using a double boiler, or the turkey roaster was perfect because there was an air gap all the way around it, so it was not getting heated directly. The pan was getting heated, but not not directly. So I didn't have any parts deformed or damaged, unless of course I put them in alcohol or brought the pan up to 200, up to over 180 degrees. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind when doing this particular method. I've tried various mixes, various concentrations of the peroxide. I retried the water experiment. The water experiment, now if you remember from just a few minutes ago, for me it's been weeks. I actually put these keys on here, and so this one here was the water, and we ended up getting a result with what I thought was just water, but when I retried it, no matter what, water just didn't do the job. So you definitely need the hydrogen peroxide. 4D Developer is 12% hydrogen peroxide. It's got a few other chemicals in there, but that didn't seem to make any difference. If you dilute it with water in 4-to-1 ratio, so 4 parts water, 1 part hydrogen peroxide, you get about a 3% solution, which seems to be it seems to be the sweet spot. You can do a little more and do it 3-to-1, and I did in some experiments. There isn't a whole lot of difference between that 3 to 4%. I got about the same result with both. One other thing before we get into the full recipe is don't use a glass container. When I tried a very thick, oven-safe glass vessel, once I was done with the experiment, I turned the hot plate off, and as the glass cooled, the entire thing shattered and everything went everywhere. I was trying a smaller experiment. It was only about a gallon worth of fluid. If that hot plate would have been on and plugged in, that would have been a bit dangerous too. So don't do that. For the recipe, it's a 3% hydrogen peroxide solution, and whether you do that off the shelf or if you go to beauty products and buy the developer, the hydrogen peroxide developer, get the liquid hydrogen peroxide developer and number 40. That gives you 12%, and then you can just dilute it down to your needs. Or I also did the same experiment with with Dollar Tree hydrogen peroxide. That particular one was already diluted down to 3%. And it's just regular hydrogen peroxide you can buy at any pharmacy. Just read the back of your hydrogen peroxide before you use it. Make sure that it is a 3% hydrogen peroxide solution. The other part of the recipe is you need 170 degrees. I got results between 165 and 177. But that is the window. That's really the window in which this is going to work. You have to get it. You have to heat the plastic up in the solution to that temperature, and don't go over 180 degrees. Otherwise, the plastic starts to flow, and it will deform. 170 degrees seems to be very safe for the plastic. It also seems to be the sweet spot to activate the hydrogen peroxide in order for it to do its job. 3% hydrogen peroxide solution, 170 degrees. Here's the most surprising thing. The first experiment I did for 3 hours. 3 hours plus, actually. It turns out that there's an interesting thing that happens when you heat up the peroxide solution to 170 degrees, and that you only need an hour, maybe less even. And when you take it out, you'll see a little bit of progress being made on that plastic piece, but it won't be completely done. But you can take it out of the water, leave it to dry, and after a few hours, it finishes the job outside the solution. So if you want a fast Retrobrite, we should call this Speedee-brite. Trademark, copyright, so on and so forth. It was a very, very quick process. In the latitudes that I live in, or maybe Jan Vita lives in, we definitely need this heat type solution in order to be able to do Retrobrite. In case you haven't been able to tell from the beginning of this video, I'm very leery about UV light, because literally every single source that I have read concerning plastics is that UV light damages plastics. So yeah, I'm concerned that UV light will any method that uses UV light as a treatment may be damaging the plastic, and you just won't be able to see it right away. I'm sure we're getting a chemical reaction, and I know we're getting some sort of reaction at lower temperatures with UV light. But after just a few weeks, it starts to come back again anyway, is what people are reporting. Well, hopefully with a non-UV treatment, that'll eliminate that. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Let me show you these keys again. These are the original ones that were retrobrited. These two here, and they look exactly the same 2 weeks later. Since they were pulled out, and I'm going to keep them on this board, and we'll just kind of, and I'm going to leave them out in the open. I'm not going to try and protect them or anything. And we'll just see if they remain and stay nice and white. As always, thank you very much for watching.